Hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I am your host, as always, Nathan, and today, even though we are a day late, I am going to be bringing you my reaction to Week 12 inside the Big 10. But before we get into the video itself, I am at this point going to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help out the channel if you did. And now with the intro done and out of the way, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it by starting with the Scarlett Johansson tier. But Nathan, why is it called the Scarlett Johansson tier? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is called the Scarlett Johansson tier because these teams looked pretty. These 5 teams here, Penn State, Indiana, Oregon, Washington, and Ohio State, all handled business, all looked really, really good. I really, for the first time this whole year, I felt like the big 3 teams, Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State, all impressed in the same week. Okay, Washington bounced back nicely after a nonsense loss against Wisconsin the week before. So, yeah, Indiana then handled that Wisconsin team thoroughly, just beat them down. Fernando Mendoza, future #1 overall pick in the draft, threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, I think. Just excellent quarterback play. Penn State beat up on Michigan State. Michigan State's just really bad. I mean, you're probably not going to win another game the rest of the year. It's really bad. I don't know how you can justify bringing back Jonathan Smith. I get that there are 1,500 college jobs opening up and potentially even more big ones because Steve Sarkisian is getting some serious smoke for NFL jobs. I don't know if he'd take it or not. Because in the NFL, as impatient as a school like Texas or a big-time school is, they're way more patient than they are in the NFL. If you have a bad year 1, there's a very good chance that if you don't immediately turn it around in year 2, you're going to get fired halfway through the season. So I don't know if he would actually end up leaving Texas, but it's certainly a possibility. And I get that Michigan State would be like 15th on the list of jobs opening right now. I genuinely do not know how you can justify bringing back Jonathan Smith outside of maybe the money that you literally cannot afford to pay him the buyout. That might also be something that can happen here. But if you don't fire Jonathan Smith, you're just throwing away next year at this point. Even though I liked Jonathan Smith when he got hired, I thought he did a very, very admirable job at Oregon State, but it hasn't worked here. It just hasn't worked here. So, yeah, that's real rough, but it is what it is. Didn't mean for that to get into a tangent on the Michigan State. This was meant to be about the Scarlett Johansson tier teams, but it is what it is. Penn State, I thought, looked good. Finally getting in the W column. You're not going to make a bowl game, so it doesn't particularly matter, but it's good to beat a team. Indiana, again, handled Wisconsin with a quality defense, put up 31, threw for 300 yards. Quality game all around. Oregon beat up on a Minnesota team that I thought was better than what they showed in this game. But they also just can't hang with Oregon. Oregon has gotten better. For a lot of hype that Michigan and Ohio State have gotten for like a bunch of new starters, not necessarily guys like Michigan that are inexperienced in those roles, but a ton of new starters, so it might take a minute to get it and put it all together. Oregon's looking like they've put it together. I think they're going to win out. Maybe a Big Ten championship game berth, but I think Ohio State ends the season undefeated, so no. All things considered. But that is a dangerous team heading into the playoffs. That is a for real national championship contender team. Washington, again, beating up on Purdue. Purdue's offense has really fallen off. They don't have the talent to be consistent, but early on in the season, they looked competent. They looked pretty good. Barry Odom might turn it around. I don't know if he will or not. But Washington looked good. They put up 49 against Purdue. They ran the ball, I thought, actually very effectively in that game as well. And then Ohio State just dominating UCLA. UCLA, they turned around. They won some games. It was fun. They were never going to make the playoffs or, a bowl game even. So, yeah. All things considered, these are the 5 teams that I thought looked the best in this past week here. That is why they are in the looking pretty tier. Moving on, we have, of course, the treading water tiers, starting off with Nebraska and Rutgers, who are on byes this past week and did not play, therefore they are treading water. And then we have our biggest treading water tier of the entire season, just because this was a relatively unimpressive week, or at least indecisive, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? UCLA getting blown out by Ohio State. Okay. Purdue getting blown out by Washington. Maybe a little bit worse, but it's Purdue. Wisconsin getting blown out by Indiana. Again, I thought Michigan was going to lose to Northwestern. I did not post my video, which I guess you could say I could have lied, but I also have a chat that I'm in, and they would have known that I lied about it. But I picked Northwestern to beat Michigan, and I didn't end up going through with it, or I didn't upload the video. I was going to pick them, but this game just screamed mudfest, inexperience and youth versus experience and just solid, competent game planning and coaching. So I thought Northwestern was played about as well as I thought they were going to. And they're in the treading water tier. USC and Iowa, one of the most anticipated games, really, of all of college football this past week. Iowa, a very quality football team. USC, also a good football team. More important that they won for Oregon's playoff hopes than Iowa, because Oregon already beat Iowa, I believe. So, interesting case there. We'll talk about USC versus Oregon on Friday, or at least I think they played this week. I'm pretty sure they play this week. We'll talk about that on Friday. Maryland, again, losing to Illinois. Maryland's defense has been honestly impressive this year. Like, that's a quality defense. Just extraordinarily young offensively with Malik Washington at the quarterback position, who's been fantastic this year, by the way. He's going to be Big Ten first-team all-freshman, not Bryce Underwood. But he's been great. Well, actually, fucking both of them. Julian Sands technically a freshman, so neither one of them are going to be on the all-freshman team for the Big Ten. But Malik Washington has been better, light years better, than Bryce Underwood this year. And that's not saying Bryce Underwood's been bad. He's been remarkably inconsistent. However, we kind of already knew that was going to happen. He played at a fucking public high school in like a bottom 10 state for football talent in the country, in Michigan. Yeah, no wonder he was going to struggle making the leap here a little bit. He's flashed. I'm not saying that he hasn't, and he's been all right, I guess, for the most part. And you see the talent, but right now he's just making dumbass decisions and plays, which we'll get into when we get to Michigan, who you notice was not in the good tier or the treading water tier, but we'll get to Michigan later. All things considered, Maryland, I am incredibly thankful that they didn't fire Mike Locksley. That would have been a tremendous mistake, firing him. I thought they did fire him, actually. I think I texted my friend, and I was just like, they fucking fired Mike Locksley for some reason? Because it makes no goddamn sense. They've got big-time talent. They're starting to pull talent. They're investing in their program, and now they're saying they're going to invest even more. Maryland can be a quality football team, especially because they have like 4 one-possession losses. They started 4-0, and then they've lost their last 6 games, but 4 of them were games they very easily could have won. They could be 8-2, probably ranked inside the top 25 at least. Probably ranked, I should say. But yeah, that could have been a high-quality football team. And just didn't break their way this year. Just a young team that didn't get the breaks. And then finally, Illinois, 24-6 against Maryland. I mean, yeah, Illinois is probably going to end the year 9-3. which would be hitting for par for them. This is a quality football team. I really like them. I don't know what they're going to look like next year without Luke Altmaier, but it's a good football team and a quality program that has solidified itself in the tier 2 of the Big Ten. And that is the Illinois Fighting Illini. Next, we're going to move on to the ass tier. And the ass tier is, in fact, inhabited by 2 teams this week, Minnesota and Michigan State. These 2 teams are the sole inhabitants of the ass tier. I guess I'll start with Michigan State because I kind of already blew my load a little bit early on Michigan State. I just sort of happened that way, and I want to upload this before 6, and it's 4:45 right now, so I'm not going to go back and re-record it. But yeah, no, I don't think you can justify keeping Jonathan Smith unless the program is in such dire straits financially that you literally cannot afford to pay him his buyout. If that's the case, then you got to keep him around. I don't know how you do that, but you got to keep him around if that's the case. They're so bad. And I thought they were going to be good this year. I thought they were going to go like 7-5. And they're going to go 3-9. Probably, maybe. I don't know. I haven't looked at their schedule this week or the final week of the season. But they might go 3-9. And that's horrible, man. That's horrible, okay? Michigan State, very, very, very disappointing team this year for me. I was just wrong about them. Like, it's just a reality situation. I'm wrong about some stuff every year. Wasn't wrong about Oklahoma, okay? Preseason number 5 on my list. Wasn't wrong about them. But I was wrong about Michigan State. I thought they'd go 7-5, maybe 8-4. Nevertheless, moving on now to Minnesota. Minnesota got fucking obliterated by Oregon, okay? I get it. I understand it. You were on the road, okay? You didn't even put up a fight. There was no resistance whatsoever. Like I thought that this team would at least be able to hold them, to make it look difficult offensively for Oregon. No fucking shot. No shot. You did not belong on the same field. Okay, it just shows you that these top-end talent tiers, Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, that's probably tier 1. And then I would say, like, there's a middle tier with USC and Michigan this year, although I expect USC to be in the top tier next year. But that's a conversation for another time. And then Michigan will be in that middle tier still. And then below that, you've got Penn State, who's still talented, but they're probably not going to be talented next year, or at least not nearly as talented. And then maybe Iowa, Illinois, probably Washington's in there too. That's a big drop, though. That's a big drop from the tier 1 in the Big Ten to the tier 2 in the Big Ten. And Minnesota might be in the tier 2. They might be in the tier 3. I don't know. But they've got a really, really, really good head coach and a quality program up there. But not good this week. And that's why you're in the ass tier with the worst team in the Big Ten, which, again, we'll get to the power rankings in a bit. But spoiler alert, Michigan State's ranked 18th. Moving on to our final tier here, the James Franklin tier, also formerly known as the Super Ass tier, which may or may not be coming back now that I've seen where James Franklin is the new head coach of, which I may or may be talking about in the next section of this video. Nevertheless, Michigan is the sole inhabitor of the James Franklin / Super Ass tier. For one simple reason, they had 5 turnovers and Northwestern had 0. Okay? Of all 60 some odd games in college football this past week, Michigan had the 3rd most lopsided net success rate games. Okay? So in terms of how more successful you were than your opponent, Michigan was the 3rd most dominant team in college football this past week, and they needed a miracle last-second field goal to win the goddamn game. Yeah, not great. Bryce Underwood has been hot and cold, man. He's been a mixed bag this year. He's also a true freshman, okay? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It takes you 30 starts to figure out what you have at quarterback. It's just the reality of the situation, okay? At each level, generally speaking, okay? At the college level, you need 30 starts to figure out what you are. At the pro level, you need 30 starts to figure out what you were. Now, 30 starts in the pro level is 2 years, okay? Which I think is pretty reasonable. If you have a bad rookie season, there might be some people calling for your heads, but that's not the end of the world. But if you come out and you're also bad in your second year, yeah, it's time to move on. I don't feel like that's unreasonable. For college, I think it's a little bit different, okay? Because 30 starts is not 2 seasons. It's close, it's 28, but a lot of the times you don't see guys really start to turn it on until they get to like start 18, 19, 20 under their belts, which would be the second half of next season for Bryce Underwood. And I think that's very possible. I think Michigan's offensive line situation, 3 redshirt freshmen starting, as well as two redshirt seniors at left guard and center, who have been kind of disappointing so far this year. Giovanni El-Hadi has been all right at left guard, but he hasn't been great by any means. And Greg Crippen at center is supremely average. So the offensive line is not great. I think they're pretty good run blocking. I think they're pretty good pass blocking, but I don't think they're great at anything. And I think it's also pretty clear that Bryce Underwood is just not ready to be a guy that you hand the keys to the offense to, okay? Jordan Marshall hurt, probably not going to play this week, might end up getting back for Ohio State. That scares me mightily against a Maryland team that is, again, better defensively than you think they are. And they have talent on offense. They've got a big-time quarterback in Malik Washington. So this could be an interesting game this next week against Maryland. I don't want it to be, and we'll talk about it on Friday, but this could be a very interesting game and tough game for Michigan this week if Jordan Marshall and a lot of these other guys are out. Because Sherrone Moore did effectively confirm that Justice Hayes will not be coming back during the regular season. I think he's holding out hope that if they win out, go 10-2, beat Ohio State, and make the playoffs, which is very unlikely. Even if they do win out and beat Ohio State, it's very unlikely they make the playoffs. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, which is part of the reason why this video is a day late, because I was working on that on Sunday instead of recording. But it's whatever. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't think it's impossible that Justice Hayes is going to come back to Michigan for his senior season. In fact, the longer he's out, I think it's more probable than not, if I'm just being entirely honest with you. Because right now, if you look at, like, the consensus boards for, like, scouting people and stuff like that, he's like a mid, third, early fourth kind of guy. There's a real possibility he could make more money coming back to Michigan next year than he would getting drafted. And now it's a 1-year thing. Now, if you get in the third round, you still have significant guarantees in your contract. So over 4 years, he would get more money than anything Michigan could offer. He'd probably get like $4 or $5 million. But next year, he might make 1.5 or 1.8 at Michigan, because he was a Heisman contender when he was healthy. He was top, I think, 3 in the country in rushing yards when he got hurt. So he was a genuine grade A superstar. I don't think it's impossible that he's going to come back. And like right now, I think it's pretty close to 50-50. And if he doesn't end up coming back and or playing in the bowl game, he might end up coming back. I don't know. I might be wishful thinking a little bit, but I don't think the NFL is going to be particularly high on Justice Hayes, because he's kind of small. He is a straight line fast. He's not all that agile, doesn't particularly catch the ball well, and isn't great in pass protection either. He's also very scheme limited. I feel like people didn't watch him at Alabama when they switched schemes to, less of a gap and more of a zone scheme, and then he comes to Michigan, which is a gap scheme. Yeah, he's way better. He's like a one cut back, and that is very scheme limiting, especially in an NFL that has become so Shanahanian zone offense kind of plays. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of factors to look at Justice Haynes potentially coming back next year. But that's just me. Getting back on focus, Michigan Northwestern. Bryce Underwood had 3 turnovers. He had the fumble with Brian Kuzdal, which is tough because he doesn't fucking work with Brian Kuzdal. Why would he work with Brian Kuzdal? He's like the 7th-string running back heading into the year. Why would he work with Brian Kuzdal? So that one's a little bit more understandable. Okay. People are going to give Chip Lindsey a lot of shit for that reverse call for the first fumble, but that Northwestern defensive end played that so unbelievably poorly that he was actually right. That defensive end was contained on that play. If Andrew Marsh gets around the corner, that's 6, or at least like 30 yards. Like, that's a big play because that defensive end was contained on that play. So he played it so badly by rushing upfield that if it was a play just like a dive or something up the middle, as opposed to an end around, that would have been a massive gain because he just flew upfield for no reason. Okay, so that was kind of a little bit of bad luck. Now that being said, both of the interceptions were 100% on Bryce Underwood. Okay, and people had been on, Chip Lindsey and to a certain extent my ass about why Michigan isn't running more RPOs. Well, motherfucker, you saw why they're not running RPOs, okay? And earlier on in the season, Bryce Underwood is not ready to run RPOs, okay? When Michigan ran RPOs early in the season, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm old enough to remember. I believe it was week 2, or not week 2. No, it was week 2. It was Oklahoma, where Michigan ran an RPO that wasn't an RPO. And Bryce Underwood just threw the ball to Donovan McCulley, who was blocking, because he didn't know that it wasn't an RPO. And now in this game, we're starting to bring the RPOs back. He had one really good completion on an RPO. They're like, okay, we got a little confidence now. Let's run it again. Threw a pick. Threw it right at the guy. Completely misread it. He should not have thrown the ball. Okay, but this is something that young quarterbacks do quite a bit, and that Bryce Underwood has been doing, as I pointed out in my film breakdown of his, which there will be a part 2 to that at some point in the offseason. He is predetermining what he's going to do every play. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But he's not reading or reacting in any real sense to the defense. He's just deciding what he's going to do, and then he's going to throw it. All right, that's what he's doing. And that's been a problem the entire year. It just has. But he's also a young quarterback. So, like, if Michigan wins this week, they're going to hit my 9-3 prediction. Like, this team's looked pretty much effectively like what I thought they were going to be. A defense that takes a step back, but is still borderline elite. And an offense that's going to improve dramatically, but is still probably just above average when it's all said and done. And that's exactly what Michigan has been this year. They're 9-3. Now, next year, they have a chance to take a massive leap forward, given the amount of players and experience that they're going to have heading into next year. They're not really losing a whole lot. Like, I don't think Jair Hill is going out either, because I don't even think he's a day 2 prospect right now. He's got the athleticism and stuff, and the film is much more consistent, but he has not broken out like a lot of people thought he was going to break out from year 1 to year 2. So I'm not sure he leaves, okay? Now, you're going to lose both of your starting linebackers, but Michigan's got depth there for days, so it doesn't matter. Rod Moore, I might be able to apply for another medical red shirt to try and come back next year because he only played like 2 games. I'm not sure he would, though. I think that's interesting, but he could potentially be a guy that, loses big time, or that loss is a big time loss for Michigan. And then outside of that, if you look at it like Derek Moore potentially could be a loss, but Michigan's got talent all over the defensive line. TJ Guy has just been a rotational piece, been probably the most disappointing player for Michigan this year. He's gone. I believe he's out of eligibility. I believe he's a redshirt senior, so he's probably gone as well. I just Michigan's not losing a whole lot defensively. Ernest Hausman is probably the biggest loss defensively, and offensively, you're losing 2 starting offensive linemen. But because Blake Frazier, but because Evan Link got hurt, I always felt like I've talked about this several times. Evan Link's going to move into guard next year. He's probably your starting left guard next year. Or it could be Afobe, who also started a bunch of games this year, although I do think it's more likely he transfers. But that's just me. Blake Frazier also might transfer because of Andrew Babola, who probably would be starting if he wasn't hurt right now. But all of that considered, I just, the offensive line is what it is. You're going to lose Donovan McCulley, and that's about it on offense. Again, Justice Haynes maybe, but even then, Jordan Marshall's coming back. You can get another running back in the portal if you wanted to. You could rely on Savion Hyder. It's a 5-star true freshman, which I wouldn't necessarily feel the best about, but he is a 5-star, so maybe he can come in and just be great right away. Definitive possibility, but yeah, next year Michigan has the chance to be very, very good, assuming they can go out and do some things in the portal, and guys make leaps that I expect them to make. So yeah, I think this is has a chance to be very, very, very good for Michigan. The fact that they're playing all these young guys, that they're the youngest roster in the Big Ten, and even then, they're playing a lot of freshmen behind the freshmen that are playing, like Jordan Young, who made a play in this game. Shamari Earls is rotating in. Jaden Daniels is rotating in the corner. Jaden Sanders is rotating in at corner a whole lot with Shamari Earls and stuff like that. So yeah, they're playing a ton of young guys. So that's going to help them a lot next year and in the years after, because a lot of these freshmen aren't going to be guys that are going to leave after their redshirt sophomore year as well. So I don't know. All things considered, Michigan played horrible. A lot of this game is on Bryce Underwood, which I get people don't want to criticize him because I think there's a very real fear in a lot of people's in the fan base that hating on somebody would lead them to transfer. Okay, which is not an illegitimate fear. It's just not. I'm going to tell you right now, that is not an illegitimate fear. Okay, but I don't think Bryce Underwood is paying attention to a YouTube channel with 750 subscribers. So yeah, that's just me though. We're going to go ahead and move on to my last little thing that I want to do before the power rankings in the Big Ten. Last little thing I wanted to talk about here before we blast through the power rankings is going to be James Franklin. Okay, I think James Franklin going to Virginia Tech is one of the best things that possibly could have happened for college football. Genuinely, I'm not saying that lightly, okay? James Franklin, as much as people like to shit on him for not being able to win the big games, okay, fine, whatever, I don't care. James Franklin is, at worst, absolute worst, a top 15 coach in college football. Him going to a significantly weaker conference in the ACC than the Big Ten, because just reality of the situation, the ACC is significantly weaker than the Big Ten right now, to a program that is the dominant brand in their state. Virginia Tech is the dominant brand in Virginia, and is also in a recruiting hotbed right next to another recruiting hotbed. The state of Virginia, especially Northern Virginia, has a ton of talent right now. And also you have the DMV area in Baltimore right there. Well, DMV and Baltimore, not in Baltimore. DMV is in Baltimore, but is whatever. It doesn't matter. You've got that just like a large swath of talent in there. If Virginia Tech can get its NIL on point, they could compete for an ACC championship next year. Legitimately. That could be a program that turns around immediately. Okay, I think a lot of Penn State players are going to transfer to Virginia because, as much as, again, people shit on him in the media, I shit on. I renamed the super ass tier to James Franklin because I thought it was funny. Okay, but James Franklin is a high quality football coach. Okay. And a ton of schools could do a lot worse than hiring James Franklin. I mean, goddamn, Penn State might, if the guy who's rumored to be their guy ends up being the guy. Fucking Penn State might have a worse coach than James Franklin, but we'll get to that later. All things considered, this is a home run, knock it out of the park hire for Virginia Tech. This is a fantastic move for the ACC and for college football and for James Franklin. Virginia Tech is one of probably the 3, maybe 4 schools in the ACC that could legitimately be destination hires. Okay. I would say North Carolina. I would say Virginia Tech. I would say Florida State. And in the new age of college football, that might be it. I don't know if I'm forgetting somebody in the ACC. I don't think I am. I'm not counting Cal or SMU, because SMU probably could be a destination hire, but they've got no business being in the ACC. They should be in the Big 12, but that's whatever. It doesn't matter. The Big 12 didn't want them. They wanted fucking UCF. But it's whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be it. I think Virginia Tech, I think Florida State, and I think North Carolina are probably the only schools in football that could flat out and straight up just be monumental, absolute destination hires. Like, they could absolutely be that. They've got the kind of fan base. They are the dominant brand in their state. Their state is a recruiting hotbed that is right next to a couple of other recruiting hotbeds. James Franklin's a fantastic recruiter. He's had multiple top 5 recruiting classes at Penn State. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to replicate that at Virginia Tech. Yeah, this is great. This is great for the ACC. This is great for Virginia Tech. This is great for James Franklin. This is great for everybody. This is just great all around. Fantastic for everybody involved, and me. It's also great for me because if you remember my video that I made on coaches and predicting who they should get, I had Virginia Tech as to go for James Franklin. So good for Nathan as well. And finally, to end the video, we have, of course, our weekly power rankings. Top 4 or top 5 actually remain unchanged from, I don't know, the past couple of weeks that I've been doing this. Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, Oregon 3, USC 4, Michigan 5. Illinois reclaims its spot at 6. Iowa moves down 1 to 7. Minnesota at 8, Northwestern 9, Nebraska 10, Washington 11. Although you can quibble about those last 3 teams there. Maybe Northwestern should be lower. I don't think so. No Dylan Raiola, Nebraska ahead of Northwestern. I'm not buying it, but that's just me. Penn State 12, Rutgers 13, UCLA 14, Wisconsin up 2 spots from 2 weeks ago, the last time I did one of these, because they beat Washington. And Maryland -1, Purdue -1. And Michigan State standing pat at the bottom of the league. And that is all that I have for you today. It's at this point I'd like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagreed with me at any point or you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. But remember to keep it civil. After all, I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And now with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.